What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Monday Review Show and Showdown Preview. I'm your host, JSU, and with me today, as always, my favorite Canadian, Tyler Tamboline, toe tagging Tambo. What's up, Tambo? How we doing, buddy?
I'm good, buddy. We're back on the grid. No power yesterday. I apologize to everyone. I hate to miss the Off the Chalk show. It's my favorite. This is another good one of my favorite shows, but that one stung. Boys came through, did work. I saw they got the likes up early, so appreciate everyone for that. We'll be back full effect this week with everything going on. Had a nice little 4-day stretch there, JSU. I got the Showdown shipper on Thursday. Well, by the way, that's funny when we're going to talk about the Showdown slate for tonight and the winner from last night. Like, it flipped at the last second last night on a Wilson fumble.
Tambo, that doesn't matter though.
No one's
outraged. No one's outraged
for
about that
one. Like, 5 guys didn't get screwed there or something. Like, you know what I mean? People get screwed every Showdown slate. It's just crazy. And then shipped golf over the weekend. Had a game theory week with the President's Cup and went through, got first in the main, and then the little $3.20 max, I shipped that as well. So a very solid 4-day stretch for sure.
Love that. Speaking of the likes, don't forget, hit that like button, that thumbs up, and hit the subscribe button, the red box at the bottom right corner. Make sure you guys do that if you haven't already subscribed, because we do a ton of free shows on this YouTube channel every day. Tambo just talked about golf. They're still grinding the golf in the Discord, shows, core plays, all that stuff we still have over at Run Pure Sports. And not only golf, but everything. Baseball, we're still grinding all these sports. We have it all over here. So make sure you check it out. Tambo, we got someone in the chat says he shipped 38K with you.
Yeah, JIS, man, he's in there. So, I didn't look who else was there, but that's incredible because it was the optimal. So it was a great lineup and not much you could do. Another chop, another duplicated lineup. But in these types of events with a captain mode and the way it was set up with the team scoring, just the only real way you could do it. So, I mean, it was incredible finish. We needed Munoz, who sat on the bench, did not play the first match, to come out on Sunday and beat Scotty Scheffler, number 1 in the world. He beat Scotty to get the job done. And that was incredible. So that was sort of the main thing we needed. And then fading a little bit of luck down the stretch, our boy Tom Kim came through for us in the match against Homa. Even though he lost by 1, he held him off on 17 to avoid the guy. There was a unique right behind us that would have jumped and won the whole 100K if Max Homa won hole 17. So we faded it. We got there and we move on. It's exciting.
Wow. Talk about running pure. You got a Munoz over Scotty Scheffler, yes. And then Max Homa doesn't get it done somehow. And you guys ship.
He won the match, but on 17, there was like a bonus for a hole not played. So if he had won it on 17, he would have won the whole not played bonus because they didn't play 18. And that was like a 3-point bonus. But Tom Kim was way closer than him. Ships the putt like 8 feet past the hole, 7 feet past the hole. And I was God. I was like, he just needed to tap it in close, and he pushes it and then he makes it for us like the hero that he is. So love Tom Kim, love golf. And like you said, we're still grinding it over here. The swing season is a place to make a ton of money. Snyder loves it. Hoop loves it. I love it. We've got our free show on this very channel every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, myself and Hoop. And then of course we got tiers, cores, putting out our favorite plays per value range. We're putting out our cores of 3 guys we love. So join us at Run Pure Sports. Get in that Discord. We're still grinding golf heavy.
It's true. It's very true. I love it. All right, Tambo, let's get on to this review of the main slate. We'll talk about the main slate just real quick and the slaughter that it was for a bunch of people, and especially because the most popular game on the slate, there was some issues with that game, and there was a lot of busts in that game, Tambo. And I don't know if you were able to watch. I know you had the power outage thing, so I don't know how much football you got to actually watch, but it was insane to me watching that game. The heat and the amount of cramping that was going on, and you could just tell there were some, like, it played a huge factor in the game in my eyes, period. Miami won the game. I bet Miami. I gave it out as my favorite dog of the week. I loved Miami going in. I got lucky because Josh Allen had multiple opportunities. I mean, Gabe Davis dropped the touchdown, literally like had the ball in his hands. And then at the last second, like the defender kind of just hit it and tried to pull it and he lost it, but he had it and he tapped his 2 feet down and then got it knocked out. So just missed the touchdown. And then Josh Allen at the 2-yard line, in my opinion, like that's a throw that Josh Allen makes almost 99 out of 100 times. I mean, he has the arm strength, the best arm strength of any quarterback, and he just stuffs it. I'm sorry, but you can't tell me that he wasn't just exhausted mentally, the pressure and the heat that played a factor in this game. Stephon Diggs kept going out with cramps. That was a reason why Stephon Diggs didn't do as much. Just a ton of players, offensive linemen. I mean, it was exhausting watching these guys going down, coming up, and you can just tell Miami's offensive lineman, Greg Little, he kept coming in and out. He had a finger injury. He was exhausted. He must have came in and out like 10 different times. It was an insane game to watch.
Yeah, I did. So I got power back like right as the slate started. So it took like an hour to get shit sorted out because I already got a generator and did all this stuff. So I flipped it all back. I did get to watch the end of that game. And the two things that stood out to me, you mentioned them some, but one was the Allen throw, that one where it just like sort of flicked off. And I remember, I don't know if you saw this last week, but they did the old Tua versus Lamar, right hand versus left hand, where Lamar looks bad left-handed and Tua looks good right-handed. So someone flipped Josh Allen for that throw. And it like, I don't know if this comes across the wrong way, but it's kind of funny. Like you make fun of someone throwing like a girl. It looked like Josh Allen just sort of did like a left-handed, like little flick. They flipped him to a left-handed guy and threw it. And it just did not look good. And so it's like, I don't, like you said, if it was just exhaustion or what. And then of course the play at the end of the game, like you got to get that. You got to be ready to spike that ball. And I don't know, like some of the Miami guys were like, getting in there in between. Remember, he needed to get over and spike it, and they kind of like shuffled through. And then when they got it down, the guys that were supposed to be
getting were holding them down, though, right? I go nuts when guys like are on the ground. They let him get up. Yeah, he had to bump into one of them, but like what drives me nuts is when dudes are sitting on people. Like, come on, man. Like, I know you're taught to do that, but like. That's bull. Like
I don't like that because, like you said, let it play out. And if you guys are a good squad and your defense does their job and they get the spike and you got to get a stop, it's just football. But I get why they're looking for the edge. But the thing was, like, you got to know that we've seen this so many times. I do not expect that from a Bills team that's this good with a leader like Josh Allen in the back, like ready to take over there. You got to get that ball and know that if something goes awry, you have the plan to still get the spike there, and just not getting that off after the comeback and being able to get yourself in that position, just horrible management, man. Like it just did not look good. So it is what it is. They lost Tua, that hit and the stumble. I know they launched like an investigation, but like, I don't even know if that has to be a serious back injury to make you do that stumble and shimmy and then shake down and then to come back from it. It looked pretty clear like it was the head, but I don't know. We'll see how that shakes out, but he did not look good after that play.
Was it a spinal injury? Like something, had to be,
like must have shot something up his whole spine because he was like
seriously
lost function, man. He fell down after that. Even after
it looked like his head snapped back, right?
When definitely hit on the first one. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, and it didn't look that bad until like you watched the replay. When you watched it, like it didn't look like it was that bad of a hard fall. It was just the way the head kind of snapped. Yeah. Now who knows? Whatever. They launched an investigation, Tambo. I'm sure they'll like. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure they'll like find someone to like blame it on if like someone screwed up. The everything. I don't know how you can screw that up, but like they said he passed the concussion protocol. That's what they said. Whatever you want to take from that. I also think too that the other part of that game, the Bills lost when they tried to bleed the clock, which was such a huge mistake in so many ways. I know they were trying to protect their defense, but when a defense knows that you're just going to run the ball because you want the clock to go and they can just stuff it and they pull you 2-3 yards back, that's a huge thing. And when they did that twice in a row, I'm like, oh my God, stop running this football. You have the best quarterback in the NFL probably. Let him just score. And if your defense gives it up, it's your defense. Let the man just do his work. And I think once it got to fourth down, just all that pressure, everything just got to him with that throw. And I think
the league is too really good. The league is way too good. To your point, athletes these days, we talk about it in golf all the time. A guy goes off for 3 days and then is up 4 strokes going into the final round and then starts playing super conservative. And it's like, oh, I'll just coast to a win. No, you won't. Continue to do what works for you and your team. In golf, it's the same thing. What got you there? Firing at pins. You can't just lean off. And it's the same in football. We've seen it Go back to the, what was it? Atlanta versus the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Same thing. Like, yeah, you have a big lead, but the athletes and the teams are too good these days. You have to stick to what works and keep getting after it. You can't just, again, there's strategy to everything, and I get it, but that's more, like you said, later in the game than that. It happens all the time. NBA, we see it. All these other sports where just, the strategy is just to bleed the clock out. It works. It's a strategy. It works at certain times, but I think you should always stick to the aggressive path that put you in the position in the first place. So I agree with you there.
All right, we got some people in the chat. Tyler's getting on me. He said the Bills have Lamar? ? All right, Lamar's the best quarterback in the NFL. Fine. I'm with the Ravens fan, so you're not going to get any argument out of the Ravens.
A Ravens fan with the same first name. Tyler knows. See,
yeah, Tyler knows.
He knows.
Tyler
this
knows
guy, he's
here.
just going off. But funny you said that, because it's another. We're talking about the slate anyway. Just recapping it. But I think you go back to the Ravens defense. I like last week when people were going 2 of this, 2 of that, I was like, gotta give them a little pass. I said, yes, they had Humphrey and Peters back, but if you actually looked at the snap counts and as the game played out last week, they were just eased back in. It was like 49% for Humphrey, 56% for Peters. The second half was the 2 rookies. And again, Tua took advantage of them either way. But then you see this week, can't make very many excuses, not just in the secondary, but they got ran all over too. So Mac Jones looked like a stud out there against them. Maybe the Ravens are just the spot to attack. And while Lamar and Andrews and those guys keep getting more expensive, I think that you still got to look at it from the other side. We talked about, what was it? Myers being out. Maybe you just run the Mac Jones, Devontae Parker and Andrews, and you've got a great tight end that's attached to Lamar, who's expensive, and just a single stack or whatever. My point is it looks like a spot that you can attack, I think. So I don't know your thoughts on that, JSU, but the Ravens keep getting beat up, man.
Yeah, and I'm with you. You said it before we jumped on too. Like the Ravens just might be a spot where we just got to continually target those games and in those situations with their defense the way it is. I mean, the Patriots did what they wanted. Yeah. Like they ran the ball through them. They threw it. They just did whatever they kind of wanted to do. But the offense for the Ravens and Lamar did what they wanted to do too. And in the end, they were just a little too much for the Patriots. But when you get a good offense like Miami, who I think shown that they're going to be good this year, when you get good offenses against them, yeah, you're going to want to target those games because there are going to be some shootouts with
little look ahead. Speaking of Miami, rookie coach who's done well so far on the road in Cincy this week, our boy BigT tweeted out the stamp and said, if you want free money, it's a generational opportunity to get your money. And he's talking better than Bitcoin, folks. He's saying generational opportunity. You can get your money in. And I'm not on Bitcoin or a Bitcoin truther, but just saying he basically put it out there that it's the best bet going. And I know it opened up at 1.5 and it's already up to 3. So Cincy Bees at home this week. That's the spot, he said.
I'm with Tony. He actually texted me before he sent that tweet. He texted me last night. He's like, hey, putting a big bet on the Bengals against Miami. I love it. I love it. This is a great matchup, I think, for the Bengals. Everyone wrote the Bengals off because they've had a rough start to the season. I knew people that were on the Jets yesterday. Like they just thought the Bengals were that bad. Like, come on, let's not overreact to some of these teams, right? It's only a couple weeks. Give them some time. I know everyone just wants to like throw the pin on Joe Burrow and just say, oh, 1 year wonder, the Bengals are nothing. I don't know about that. Let's
which is already horrible, by the way. He was on track for potential rookie of the year when that serious injury happened. And obviously Herbert deserved it and probably would have got it either way. But Burrow was having a great season in his rookie year and then bounces back from that to come back and just crush last year and, get the team all the way to the Super Bowl. And now this year, like you said, the team starts slow. Look at the Chiefs last year. People wrote the Chiefs off after 2 or 3 weeks last season, and they went on to still do at least a little bit of something, came through in the end, tried to get there, didn't quite work out. But the point was they weren't as bad as people made them up to be. And that O-line for the Bengals still doesn't look great. He's still taking sacks, but they're 2 weeks in, now 3 weeks in, I guess, to getting things straight. And at least they got the W. So we'll see how it shakes out from there. But I'm with you on that one as well.
Yeah, I mean, that O-line's going to improve. I think everyone's just jumped. They add new people to the mix of the offensive line. It takes a little time as a unit, right? Because it's a unit. You got to all work together, and it takes time for that. So I think everyone's just got to just take it back a little bit. They went to the Super Bowl. They ended up losing. it's tough probably the first couple weeks coming back. You're a young team. So I like them a lot too. I already bet it. And I think it's a winner. I think everyone's going to overreact to Miami beating the Bills because the Bills are the greatest team on earth that can't be beat. And yeah, we'll see what happens on Thursday night. So check that out. Tambo, anything else like with the slate? Because I thought the slate that there was just so much chalk that ended up busting for different reasons. David Montgomery obviously got hurt.
Yeah.
No one's victory lapping a guy getting injured. Now the backup does come in and run for
Herbert just crushed.
Like literally, if you were on the running game because you thought the Bears O-line looked better in the run game and you thought that they were just going to push around the Texans who have struggled, to stop the run first couple of weeks, it wasn't wrong, right? It's just unfortunate of injury. You know what I mean? Like you get the injury, but at the same time, this comes back to when guys are chalky, Tambo, there's all these reasons in your head that you can kind of make up to say, I'm not going to play X guy. It's just another reason when someone's, obviously can get hurt. It's football. We see it all the time. But then you got Lenny, who was another chalk piece, and he busts. I mean, they couldn't find any holes running. Literally, the offensive line is just so blown up for the Bucs that it was definitely a struggle for him. But, he busts. It's just comes to tell you that, like, sometimes just fading the chalk and hoping that it doesn't work out is the best scenario in some of those large field tournaments.
Yeah, for sure. And a couple of notes on that. Like one, when I'm looking at the chalk like that, JSU, especially at running back, because typically that's where we find better chalk. Like the running back chalk is usually a little bit safer for good reason. You talked about Houston and the spot, and it ended up being Herbert because of the injury. But the point would be, I couldn't really find a solid pivot around Montgomery. So I was like sort of field weight on him. I liked him, but I didn't want to go crazy with him because we know how that can go. But like for the other guys like Fournette, you could find more pivots up there for the guys at the top. So I thought that was the way to go about the slate. The other thing I'll say is it wasn't just, so here's the real conversation it's going to lead into probably looking at our Millie Maker winner for the $20 yesterday, is that it wasn't really that just the chalk failed. It was the main, call it the chalk you want, but the chalk roster construction failed. Everybody yesterday wanted to pay up at wide receiver and just play whatever because of what happened in week 2. What happened in week 2 was running backs failed. So this week, the strategy was play high-end wide receivers because they're all in great spots, which that makes sense. Play whatever you want at running back because the running backs all suck. That's fine. And don't play any running backs in the flex because you don't need them. And that kind of work. But the paying up at wide receiver is what crushed everything because they did not come through. And you needed, like, if you played, I looked it up after, but like Olave, I know it was the air yards reasoning, but the point was the targets and the yards were there if he could catch some balls. Matt Collins already was kind of the number 3 with Renfro there. Renfro's out. He slides to the number 2, and it made sense. Like, again, not too high owned, less than 10% at that price point. Excuse me. And then guys like the better wide receivers that we'd seen something from even recently, like Devontae Smith, he made sense, right? If you go look at that. So, I mean, you could get after it by just taking some of those cheaper wide receivers. You didn't get a lot out of the running backs still, was the point. But if it was just a different roster construction to get off the main, what I'm calling a chalk roster construction, it's not really chalk. It was just people were overweight on it yesterday for sure.
Yeah. And you talked about like looking at this Millie Maker winner, which Simon, if you want to throw that Millie Maker winner up, we can talk about it real quick. But it's funny because, like, again, it's not like every single player in his lineup went for 30, right, Tambo? Like, it's a snowflake in there. Look at it. Yeah, there's a snowflake in there. And then there's some guys who just were okay. You know what I mean? Which is, that's where it comes in. But you talked about the roster construction. And if you look at his roster construction, his highest priced guy outside of Lamar, who was obviously a winner at 43 points, and he was 8K. But his highest priced guy after that was 6,900. Paying up at tight end was contrarian. It was. If you paid up for a tight end, a lot of people were paying down. And there were guys that you could have paid down for and had decent games, you know what I mean, that caught touchdowns and stuff like that. But Mark Andrews was definitely in tournaments. That was definitely a leverage play at 2%. And then you get those middle tier wide receivers that really no one wanted outside of maybe Waddle, right? Waddle was someone just because he was a part of the game. But I mean, from a lineup construction standpoint, these 6K receivers, the 5K receivers, they were low owned. They were low owned because people weren't landing there, right, Tambo? They were going all the way up and then they were going all the way down.
Yeah.
And so like Mac Hollins is on this team. Mac Hollins was someone that people were going down for. But I even said on the Up to Lock show, Dunkel asked me, like, what do you think his ownership's going to be? And I was like, I don't know, 10, 12%. Like, and he's like, really? You think it's going to be that low? And I'm like, I just don't think people are excited to play Mac Hollins. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't think they're like up for it. And there were other cheap guys around. Then you got the Patriots situation that opened up. You had the Bucks where they were out Julio and Godwin and Evans. And then you had Romeo Doubs. There was just a lot of guys where I'm like, I think people would prefer Tom Brady with cheap guy, Aaron Rodgers with cheap guy over Derek Carr with cheap guy. You know what I mean? So in the end, you get this lower ownership than you probably thought going in on the cheap guy who you needed pretty much because he crushed.
Yeah, I got it a little bit wrong at least, but one thing I liked about the Mac Hollins situation, I ran it back because everyone was on Carr in week 2. So I ran it back with a way and everyone was on Adams and he busted. And he was one of the higher priced wide receivers that was a little bit less. Moore had Kupp, Jefferson, guys like that up there. So I thought if I run Carr, Adams, Hollins, but the one mistake was running it. I really like Treylon Burks, especially with Kyle Phillips being out. Not that he mattered too much, but again, target share just moves it around a little bit. So I thought, why not go to Burks, who I liked? And realistically, the best play was Henry, because what we know about Derrick Henry is he was a higher priced running back, which would flip your script a little bit. He's a guy that is very risky in the spot, but if he gets rolling earlier at any time, that can speed up the game where it's like an 80-yard touchdown on the ground from him, just an example. And then it makes Carr have to come back the other way. So not saying that would have got there, but the point is that's how you got to think about some of these setups early on. We're not being results oriented. Another thing was with Hollins and Olave were both two guys that I liked. Talked about them on the Friday news dump. I think that was a spot where you could make your lineup different. Again, I wouldn't have got all the pieces right, but my best lineup yesterday was with CMC and Henry, and then Olave and Hollins. And it was just two secondary stacks where you paid up at running back, paid down at wide receiver. I didn't get it filled out 100% correctly because it was Mariota, London, Pitts, and Lockett. And I needed them to score on that last drive for a chance at a FFWC ticket. But the point would be setting up your lineup just a little bit different with those two secondary stacks where you're paying up a running back instead of wide receiver, filling it out with a main stack that's correlated and makes sense and is still cheap enough because Mariota, London, and Pitts is a very condensed offense. And Cordarrelle Patterson could have been in there as well. But if you're building those stacks for large fields, who else would you really be adding to them? To me, it's like Mariota with two of these three guys. That's how I would build it. Run it back with one of Lockett or Metcalf. Like, it's the easiest game to target, even though it had the lower total. And at halftime, that game looked really good. So did the Las Vegas Tennessee game, by the way. Both those games looked very good at half and then sort of died off completely. But they were not the most popular games. This Millie Maker winner kind of pieced together, like you said, had Devontae Smith from a popular Philly-Washington game as far as game total goes. Had Waddle from that Buffalo-Miami game. Went with Lazard, who was interesting because Dobbs ended up being the better play, but Lazard was the wide receiver one for a team with injuries, with a good quarterback in Aaron Rodgers and a different roster construction. So from that perspective, I love it. And then just like they said in the chat earlier, Lamar, Andrews, it's New England. Who gives a shit? Don't even run it back. Just play Lamar and Andrews at 2% ownership each and see if it can get you there. And sure enough, what do they put up? Almost 80 points, right? So 70 something. So yeah.
It's interesting too. Like, so you had the Patriots situation open up. Now he didn't run it back with any Pat, which I could understand for the one reason of you're single stacking. You got Lamar, who has the rushing upside. He can still get there in a blowout. I get it. And you only have one other guy. So it's not like you're double stacking where you kind of really hope that there's points on the other side. He was maybe thinking, I don't know if I don't feel confident the Patriots score. Maybe he didn't feel confident on if they scored, who it would be either. It could be.
That's it. I think that's a good point, though. You just said that's why these spots get challenging, because people just say, like, the rules say you got to run it back. I seen the, I subscribe to this newsletter, so it's cool, like the DFS daily newsletter, and they put it out with who won what the day before, and they break down lineup construction, all kind of like what we do in a email format. But what I will say, they gave this lineup an F. I believe it was this, so maybe it was the FanDuel one. I can't remember, but the point would be, you can't, like, it won the damn tournament. And if you want to put a strategy to it, it's not really what I would build, because I correlate more. And I think longer term, I would have better opportunity to get to the top. But in the end of the, like the first example that we talked about here, do you have to run back Lamar Andrews? You don't. When they're playing the Patriots and you have to figure out, is it going to be Ramondre Stevenson? Is it going to be Bourne, Aguilar, Hunter, a second tight end in your flex with a guy like Hunter Henry? Like, it's just so hard. And yeah, it was the FanDuel one where they called that out. But either way, the point is, given these winning lineups, these grades, when there's something to them, it is what it is. Like, it may not be what you think. Remember JSU last year when somebody won the Millie and everyone was going on Twitter how it was over leveraged, like they played too much leverage?
Yes.
Like, to me, I'd rather be over leveraged than all chalk like that.
Especially in the Millie Maker. Like,
right.
Yeah. What do you mean? Like, that's how you should almost build a little bit, especially if you have like a few bullets. Like, that's how you should be over leveraged. I think in a lot of scenarios, you could look at this lineup and maybe say that this guy had some leverage spots where you're like, oh, he didn't really need certain guys. But again, you don't know. The other thing I thought was interesting was, like, he didn't, I don't know, Tambo, I know you build this way, but like, he didn't have like Waddle and Gabe Davis, right? Like a little like mini like secondary stack in there. And he didn't do it with Washington. Maybe he thought in some ways, I didn't want to have a Buffalo guy because I don't know, like maybe he didn't want to play Gabe Davis because of the injury and he couldn't get up to Steph Diggs. You know what I mean? Just roster construction wise, but he didn't do it with Washington either. And I didn't feel comfortable with any Washington guys. I mean, I was literally pounding the drums for everyone to play the Eagles defense. Like, just play the Eagles defense. Like I told everyone when defense got brought up, I brought up one defense, and it was the only defense that I pretty much went all in almost on the Eagles defense for the most part. I might've played one or two lineups with the Jags. But like most of my teams were Eagles, and I don't know. I just felt super strong that Washington was going to not be able to move the ball effectively. So either way though, like he didn't really do anything like that. Do you have an issue with that personally?
Yeah, I don't. Like, that's what I'm saying. Would I build this lineup? Absolutely not. It wouldn't even be possible with the way I do my lineups, but I'm saying I can't give him shit for it. And when you think about the lineup, like I said, it's pretty simple. It's Lamar to Andrews. Doesn't want to run it back. And I'm not sure how much thought the winner actually put into this. Abe Dollar, shout out to them. Congrats. My point is, like, listen to this. Lamar Andrews makes sense to me why you don't run it back if you don't want to pick and choose between these New England guys. And it's still the Patriots and it's still Mac Jones. So I get that. Why run back an Aguilar when you can find the money for a Devontae Smith who's attached to Hurts? If I'm not going to have Hurts and I'm going to go with Lamar, like he could have went down from Lamar to Hurts to match with Devontae and then went to somebody on Washington. My point would be he didn't do that because he must not have liked it. So Fournette, chalk, plug in, thought he was good, rated out well in projections. Makes sense. Pierce got a little bit popular actually in the end, up to 14%. Not enough to matter, but it makes sense for the opposite side of the Montgomery chalk to flip the game script. All it had to do was flip, and it could have been Pierce instead. It ended up being both running backs actually, but it's just interesting there. Funny enough too, on this note real quick, JSU, for the slate, Pierce and Montgomery, or in this case, ended up being Herbert, worked or could have worked. Also, what was it in the other game? Edmonds and Singletary in that game. Another spot where you actually could have had both running backs, and usually I would never have that. So just of note, interesting there. I also kind of like Mixon with Michael Carter yesterday, but it ended up being Breece Hall getting all the targets. So the point would be the opportunity to do it this week was there. Lazard. So one thing I will say I love about this too, JSU, is I talk about this all the time. Again, I wouldn't get this lineup myself, but I like attaching your pieces to some other good pieces, and especially good quarterbacks or quarterbacks that you like. Lazard, Aaron Rodgers, Waddle, Tua, Devontae Smith, Hurts, Andrews stacked in with Lamar, all the pass catchers, even Mac Hollins, a value. Derek Carr ain't nothing special, but the point was everybody wanted to play him at 20% the week before. He must be special enough to get you something. So all these pass catchers were attached to good spots. The Jags D against what was expected to be a backup quarterback. Remember, lineups locked with the line being like -3 Chargers, expecting Chase Daniel. Not much you can do about that once it's already locked in. He could have went. I don't even think if he used all his money, I think if I recall correctly, there was not another defense that you could flip to there. So again, would I get this lineup? No. Do I think it's an amazing build? No. I would just, for long-term winning these tournaments, it takes a lot more correlation. But on a random slate like yesterday was, where not a lot worked no matter what you did, this is kind of how you have to think about your builds. And I think it's fine. Got the job done. Shout out Abe Dollars, $1 million richer.
Yeah, shout out. I mean, nothing wrong with winning a nice million on a Sunday. So can't complain there, no matter how it gets done. And yeah, I mean, it was just a really good lineup. It wasn't like the complete nuts, though. Like I said, you don't always need 30 points. The slate dictates everything. So the slate dictates how some of these lineups end up winning. And when a bunch of the chalk just fails, you can have even donuts. We've seen donuts in winners. We saw it last week with Paris Campbell in the winner, and he had a donut in some of those large field tournaments. So you don't necessarily need everyone to just completely go off. And he didn't have that here, and he still won. He still found a way to get it done. Shout out to him. I mean, he had a really nice 2% owned Lamar and 2% owned Mark Andrews that definitely helped him. And the lineup construction just being different was really what helped him the most. So
big time that. And funny enough, last week, if you remember, we didn't fully review it, but last week, the winner of the $20 was like within 10 points of the optimal lineup. Just an incredible setup where basically they needed Pollard over Jeff Wilson last week, and they would have had the optimal pretty close. This week, the optimal was 274 points, and 210 got the job done. So it just shows, and it wasn't that crazy.
Insane, too. Absolutely insane.
Yes, and yes, Khalil Herbert throws it off a little bit, but just to give people the optimal for this week, it was still Lamar and Andrews. It was still Mac Hollins, and then it went Khalil Herbert, Cordarrelle Patterson, Olave, Devontae Smith, who Abe Dollars also had, Marquise Brown, and the Eagles defense, who you talked about. So there was, it wasn't like way off the board, but it also didn't have much correlation either. But again, it attached guys to good situations where they have floor and upside combination mix. So I think it's fine. Like I said, I think that, even the secondary stack that was built in here, that just talked about it, our boy Nades threw it in there, but Fournette with Lazard, that was in there too. So it wasn't that crazy. It was just a good lineup all around, and it got the job done.
Yeah, definitely got the job done. When in my head, when I saw this lineup, instantly I was like, Patterson in the Eagles defense for Lenny and Jags. And you're like, that's like a plus 30. If someone did that, they would have won this thing by like 30 points more, I think. I'm pretty sure Patterson had like 27, right?
25 and 18, 43.
Okay, 20 something. Yeah. Yeah.
20 more. Would have been like 230-ish. So, and would have ran away with it. That was what could happen yesterday, though. I know it was pretty bunched at the top, but I mean, it was, 274 getting the job done with Herbert. No one would, again, the other thing too, just to make note of, I don't know what Herbert's ownership ended up being yesterday, but I do know that a lot of people did still leverage the Montgomery chalk by playing Herbert, because not only is he a backup that was still getting some work where it could happen, but what if they get up by more than enough and you see it happen later in the game? Or what if there is an injury and the chalk is there and all that stuff? So Herbert was still played yesterday on this slate, just probably only like 2 or 3% versus what, what Montgomery was at. So we can see some angle for that in these large field tournaments as well.
Yeah, playing a backup. I mean, you hear it in Showdown talk all the time, right? Play a backup. You never know what can happen.
It happens all the time in Showdown.
Thrusted in. Yeah, I mean, people do it all the time. So, yeah, you can make a case on a main slate, I guess. But
speaking of Showdown, good segue.
I know. I was just going to say, let's get that Showdown winner up from last night. We'll talk a little about last night's Showdown, and then we'll get into tonight's Showdown slate. So we'll give you a little preview of tonight's showdown with the Cowboys and the Giants. After
I will say about last night, thank God there was showdown, because if there wasn't, literally, I mean, even with showdown, unwatchable. That was a horrible game. I don't care what type of football you like.
You said thank God for the showdown slate last night. My eyes were bleeding from watching this game.
I'm saying the only reason to even be, I was watching it on a box score, trying to catch up on some shows with the wife. This was like, because we had no power for so long. I was like, all right, this is good. Don't need to even watch this game after the way it started. And I was like, I'll just leave it. The lineups are in. Whatever happens, happens. It did not end well for me. And it was like, man, I got to it by the ending. I watched the last half hour or so just to let it play out. But man, just so bad. And we have, tonight is okay. I actually like the slate for tonight. We're going to get to it. Miami at Cincy on Thursday is awesome.
Kansas City wait for that
at game. Tampa Bay is Sunday. And then the Rams at the 49ers. And then next Thursday, we got to go back to another Denver game with Indy at Denver. So I'm not looking forward to that, but we got 3 or 4 good games.
You had me 6 to midnight, Tambo, and you brought me back down. I'm sorry.
We got in 3 good sessions, though, before that.
That's true.
All right.
That's true. All right. So let's talk about this game real quick. I mean, first of all, is Russell Wilson just washed? When I watch him now, it's tough. It's tough when you watch him now. Maybe there's a reason why Seattle was just like, whatever. Stuff didn't work out. Maybe they knew it and they were just ready to kind of move on, let him go. But it's tough to watch and see him. But then you got Jimmy G on the other side, who drives me insane the way he friggin' lofts that ball up. He throws off his back foot constantly, i.e. that tipped interception that he had at the end. The guy just does so many things that drive me insane, and I can't stand watching him. Somehow he wins football games, though. That just shows you probably the coaching staff really good, and he's got good players around him, like Deebo Samuel, who should have had 2 touchdowns in the first quarter and a half. Missed them completely on the right side in the beginning of the game, wide open. Could have lobbed it up to him and still walked in the end zone. And then he threw a ball, Tambo, I don't know if you saw, it was on the left side. It was on a wheel route where he was lined up in the backfield. They had him matched up against a linebacker, and he ran around the left side. And Jimmy G threw a ball it went up so high and then just slowly fell down. And Deebo had to slow himself down, catch it in a basket almost, and then he got a few steps. If he hits him in stride, though, he's gone. I think he's gone. Again, just stuff like that drives me insane. He's so cautious. He's got happy feet, too, in the pocket. He just, even when there's no pressure, he needs to get that ball out. That's what happened with the interception. I don't even think there was pressure. He just, had to get it out. And he does it all the time.
Jimmy G with the sad feet, the out of bounds, steps back in the end zone. The Orlovsky, man. Orlovsky was pumped on Twitter, said finally gets the name out of his name into Jimmy G's, because that was just incredibly bad. So, like you said with Russell Wilson, the issue is, I think, just, he's getting older. It is part of it. I know they paid him a bunch of money, but apparently it was not to let him just air it out. No one's going to let Russ cook. There was a lot of good spots making fun of him last night for what his cooking looked like and things like that, because it's not looking good, man. And there is still opportunity. There's guys there, Sutton, Judy. I know Judy was just coming back from injury, but the point would be, in the end, it just turned out to be incredibly bad. The Denver D, I'll still give them some credit. I still think they look better. I know it was up against Jimmy G, so not just for last night. I'm just saying so far this season, from what I've seen, I think they're capable. It's just a matter of what the game plan and the game flow is going to be. But for me, I'm good with not watching Denver games anymore. And I'm not looking forward to the Indy Denver game. So we'll see.
Anthony G, you're in the chat right now talking shit. You said bye 5 minutes ago, and you're still in here watching. Get out. We don't want you if you don't want to be here. You don't want to be here and hang out. Get out of here. We don't need you watching. It's fine. Come back. Big T will be back. I think for premium members later, you can watch him with Whistles and JT Hayes later.
You might not be able to watch him if it's premium. He says your prices are outrageous. The cheapest prices in the industry for all sports for one price, but they're outrageous, baby. And all winners and people that actually play DFS and put thousands of dollars on it. So when we lose, if you lose, we probably lose too, because it's all our stuff. If we win, you win too. That's why members never win is out there. And you can
Sunday
check
Wood Show
report, baby.
Yeah, Sunday Wood Show is for you, Anthony G. Come back Sunday. Big T will have you covered on the Wood and the Off Chalk Show, the show before. So check those out. if you're, subscribed to the channel, you'll get notified when those guys go live for shows that we do for free every week. So check those out if you want. And we'll see you later. I really don't care. Like people like Tambo, people like, you really talk about viewers this way. I'm like, dude, have you ever actually watched a show with Big T? I swear. So he must be new, because Big T makes fun of viewers more than anyone else in the industry. Yeah. And
he loves the chat. He talks to the chat all the time. He takes a pause. You ask him a question. He goes, 1 sec. I got to talk to this Anthony guy in the chat right quick. Buddy, you said this, I'm saying this. So we don't care. Like you said, it's not really about how we treat others. Like we treat everyone with respect, where it's due. We love our members. We spend a lot of time. Like I said, we don't have a clock in the Discord that says when we'll show up to answer your questions, to help you out while we're doing all of our lineups and putting things together on top of all the content, et cetera, that's on the site, doing these shows for free, et cetera. We're out there in the Discord answering questions all day, right up to lock, everything midnight, don't matter. No special times or zones. We're in there helping our members out. That's what we care about.
All I said was, if you've been in here for 5 minutes, you said bye 5 minutes ago. I don't know why you're still here. That's all I said. So people can't handle stuff sometimes. Everyone's so soft nowadays. They can't handle a little banter back and forth. This show's definitely not for you if you're that soft. And Big T show probably ain't for you either. I'll just tell you that right now. We'll see you later for the Whistles, Tony, and JT show. If you're not a member, sign up and watch that show for all the premium members over here. Every Monday, those guys go and do a showdown show. And that's what we'll get into right after we finish this lineup. Tambo, what did you think of this showdown lineup from last night? I mean, Broncos defense was in the flex, Melvin Gordon, Jeff Wilson, Cortland Sutton, Deebo Samuel, and then Brandon Ayuk was the captain of this team. And right away, the things that stand out to me, and I heard the show that was on last night on this channel with Mangone, Rubio, Meg, Kurt, those guys, they were talking about no quarterbacks in lineups, like building lineups where neither quarterback is in the lineup. That's the first thing that sticks out to me. They have literally 3 pass catchers, one of which is in the captain, and then they have 2 running backs in a defense with no quarterback, which is very interesting, right?
Yeah, definitely. The no quarterback thing is huge. You talked about our premium show with Whistles and Big T and JT, but I think Whistles has mentioned a bunch of times. Big T's talked about it plenty, like some of the ways to go about these slates where you see these 2 teams that can be a little bit more defensive is to do that. Exactly. You don't need the quarterback. It's a full PPR site with bonuses where they really lead more to the receivers, the running backs, if they can get the rush yards. The D's will score if there's going to be lower scoring. So it made perfect sense to me where you've got Ayuk, Deebo and Wilson both have ways to get there on the ground. Deebo obviously has more ways than anything, but you needed the money in the captain. So Ayuk makes more sense where he was cheaper in the captain than Deebo in the flex. So I think that's key. Sutton was the guy they chose from the other side, which again, I see this lineup pretty clearly saying that their script is it's going to be a lower scoring game. The quarterbacks aren't going to go off, hence the defense and the 2 running backs at the bottom. And if you look at it, if it's going to be lower scoring, you want that touchdown equity. I actually think you could argue for the Broncos, the touchdown equity was Sutton and Gordon. And Gordon was cheaper than Williams, but you've seen it, JSU. You're a Javonte truther, if no other, out there. It is insane, though. You just have to get past that and understand now that's just not going to happen. They are keeping him fresh. They are using both quite well, and Gordon is still working. No matter what people want to say or think, it's ugly. Javonte's better. We know this. Everyone knows this. You can't miss it if you just watch it for 5 minutes, which is, like I said, almost the only amount of time I gave this game last night.
Well, then they used Boone last night, too. That's where I was, like, really confused. I'm like, wait a second. Now Boone's in the game, playing on third downs. They
I had Boone in the attack plan. You know why? Because another great video that we have is Big T with Ryan Harris, who it was from week before this. It was last time Denver was on the primetime slate, showdown slate during a primetime game and said, get on Boone. They're going to want to try and use him some. The point of that is not always let's get on Boone because it's going to be his week. Instead, if they're literally willing to go to the third guy, you have to be willing to understand how important Gordon can still be as the second guy. And I know Gordon captain lineups were winning this thing until the very last second on that fumble because Jeff Wilson, the PPR point for the catch and the fumble cancel out, the 16 yards basically swung it where he moved this team into first. And so a good lineup overall. It makes perfect sense to me. I love builds like this. And another thing was a unique way to get different with a 3-3. Remember, the 3-3s, we talked about it all throughout our Discord and our content yesterday. They were very popular on this slate. 3 of one side, 3 of the other we're talking about. In this case, though, when you do a 3-3 with no kicker, no value plays, the defense is different, and no quarterbacks, that's going to be a different way to use the popular construction, but not go about it that way. Go ahead.
Well, and we've seen this a bunch now happen on showdown slates like this, where you play the captain, right? And normally when you put a captain, you think like that. Normally you think that team's going to win, right? I think in most people's mind, like when you captain a San Francisco guy, you're pretty much, unless they're like just super cheap, Tambo,
right?
You're thinking like, okay, San Francisco gets it done. Now this lineup obviously says kind of sluggish game, right? We already said that. But what he did also was he took the defense from the other side of the captain, which we've seen now work out on some of these showdown slates where you can get kind of more unique winners. And I think that's another thing he did to separate himself. Obviously, it was split. I think it was a 5-way chop or something like that.
I think it was 3-way last night because it was 250.
Oh, was it 3?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. It was 250. So yeah. But either way, it's still just something they did to make themselves a little more unique to the field. And we've seen it work now. And maybe it's something where we get these sluggish games and we can slowly transition to tonight's game. That could be another sluggish game. And maybe we should be looking at not just necessarily having defenses from the same team correlated with the captain. Maybe it's just not a rule people should do. Because I think in people's heads, it's like, oh, if I build a 4-2 and I'm heavy on this team and I like a defense, I should probably play that defense, right? Like on their team.
I think one last thing, because we are going to transition, but I like our guy Nades. I call him Nades the 5, but he won showdown. I think it was last week or the week before. But the point is, he brought up something that I was hitting on yesterday too. And I talk about this often actually on slates like this. So, and it's going to be important for tonight too, as well, JSU. But last night, if you looked at the slate, there was like literally 10 guys that could be that one-off that could ship you the slate, right? Between running back with like Boone and Mason and guys they had there. And then at wide receiver, there was a bunch of cheap guys like Hinton and Hamler and guys at tight end with Sobert and Tomlinson and Warner. And people were playing all these random one-off Beck. And he had mentioned here, I needed Melvin Broncos over Jimmy and Beck, and I had it. And it's saying, I love Nades. I'm not calling him out. I'm just saying that's an example of, I think, how a lot of people build lineups. Everyone's looking for the magic one-off in Beck. We'd seen it before, so it could work. We saw it in week 2 or week 1, whenever it was, where they used Beck and he scored a touchdown or whatever it was. The point being, and you would expect the quarterback to have the better floor and the higher ceiling. But my point is why this lineup made perfect sense is instead of getting after it that way, it told the story of a lower scoring game where the quarterback's not going to be needed. And if the quarterback's not needed, Jimmy G, why not plug the Broncos defense instead of a cheap guy like Beck? I know the Broncos D was more, but if you're saying no to Jimmy G, you could or should be saying yes to Broncos D. If you're saying yes to Broncos D, that lands you in a spot where Gordon is, and that tells the story of the lower scoring, back and forth sort of lineup where you get that lower scoring overall game, and it makes sense. And even if you built them both, like build that lineup and then say it also is Jimmy G paired with Ayuk captain and a punt play in Beck at the bottom for a 4-2, that's what I would do. But that's where you have to look at those 2v2s. And the point would be, which will lead into tonight, is all these random one-offs are nice to mix in, but sometimes it's simpler than that. And you can just get there with a unique construction without needing it, while even using the most common construction being a 3-3 build last night.
Perfectly said. Let's move on to this night slate, because I got nothing else from that. I mean, if you didn't learn from that, then I don't know, maybe this show ain't for you, because that was perfectly said by Tambo there. So let's move on. Let's talk about tonight's game. Giants, Cowboys. And I do have to, Tambo, just because I'm on this show, and last week I was on the show, and I literally gave out the Stone Cold Nuts, which was Gilliam in the fullback spot. And I told everyone he was $200. He was the same price as Kumaro. I gave out the friggin' winner. I do have to take my lap because I did give you the exact way he would score, which was a screen pass, and it's exactly how he did score. And he was on the winning lineup in Showdown. He was not on the winning lineup in the 2-game Millie Maker just because no one played him. But I think the optimal was him over, I forget who it was that scored like 8 something and was on the Millie, but one of those running backs, whoever it was. So I will take my lap there on that. But let's move on to tonight and talk some Saquon Barkley against Micah Parsons, which should be fun. I know Parsons was like sick and he's really hasn't practiced all week, but I think he's going to be a go. I would assume we'll have to wait like for sure, but I'm pretty sure they said like he should be good to play. So I would expect him there. And then you got the Giants team who, as you know, quietly been, won a few games and I guess maybe you could say they're relevant, right? 2-0, decent start. Tambo, what do you think of this Giants team?
Not in love with them. I think there's some definite plays on here. You mentioned it off the top. One of the biggest things you're going to have to wait for in this is the inactives. Dalton Schultz is going to be a big piece of that with the backup tight ends that they've got there on the Dallas side. But for the Giants, again, one thing I will say is I think we could see a little bit more than what we saw last night. So I don't know if I would be building for like that same sort of 13-10 type of game or anything here, but I would be building, for the Dallas side to do a lot better. I think that Rush has shown that he can at least do something with these receivers. And I just like the Dallas pieces. He's not going to score you a bunch himself, but again, you can get after the run game there. I just think, don't you think people will be heavier on sort of Barkley, Daniel Jones, the guys on that side than you will on the Dallas? That's just sort of how I see it out of the gate, at least here. So I don't know. That's just general thoughts up front, JSU. What do you got?
Yeah, so I agree. I think people are higher on the Giants than the Cowboys right now, right? So naturally, that means let's go to the Giants studs first, right? Saquon Barkley, I think is naturally going to be the guy that people will go to first in captain builds. I would expect him to be the highest owned captain. That's just my guess. Now, I don't know if it means crazy ownership or not, but I would expect him to be the highest owned. Now, the spread's only 1, right, Tambo? So it's not like Vegas is expecting this to be a blowout or one team's way better than the other. The Giants are home and they're 1-point favorites. So, I mean, say it what you will. I don't think the Giants are like getting a massive amount of respect, though. Even though they have won 2 games, they have their team, right? Obviously, Dallas is down their quarterback, so that's massive. Dalton Schultz, another guy down, their wide receiver core. They're playing Noah Brown, who actually looked good last week, but Noah Brown, CeeDee Lamb, who's kind of gotten nicked up a little, but he's in there still. And then just a bunch of other guys after that, you know what I mean? And then you got the running back situation. So I think this is a game where we could see 2 different things, either a sluggish game like yesterday, where maybe you make builds where there's no quarterbacks again. My issue with that, though, is Tambo, now that it's been seen recently, as in last night, I think it actually might be something that people more commonly will think about.
Everything we've seen this season has been that, and especially in Showdown. Like if it went a 5-1 the slate before, the next slate 5-1s become more popular. If, last week the running backs didn't work when we did our earlier slate review, this week no one wants to use running backs because they all still suck again. It's like, and that kind of worked out. I'm just saying everyone's doing it's still early in the season. Like we always say on week 3, if you're down on week 3 right now, you're only down so far. You can get it all back on Monday night. Right. It's still technically kind of part of it. So I think if you look at it from that perspective, it was said in the chat, and I think for sure it shows like Barkley, Daniel Jones, Sterling Shepard, guys like that, even Richie James Jr., because he's cheap enough. You'll see these guys in the captains, and then you'll see CeeDee Lamb, and some will go Zeke Elliott. But the point is, the Giants are going to show out more. We'll see more 3-3s and 4-2s with Giants in the favor on those 4-2s, I think, where people are filling it up with Barkley, Daniel Jones together, Sterling Shepard and somebody else, or a cheap receiver, and then run it back with like a Rush or a Zeke or a Lamb and a Rush or things like that. So I think in looking at it from that perspective, if we can get behind this Dallas side to be able to get the job done here, you're going to be in great shape. Even like if you run 4-2s, the Dallas side, 5-1s would be crazy. Like I think you'll be way more like you'll be a lot different than the field when you're running those here. But I think they'll still be more popular too tonight, just because the way people see these teams setting up. I think they see it more as like a blowout than they do it actually being a close game, surprisingly, with the spread being only 1 and a division game.
You think people see this game as a blowout?
Well, I think more people, sorry, I shouldn't say it like that. I always think DFS terms. I think people will build more towards 4-2s and 5-1s than on a normal slate, just the way it shakes out. When you've got Barkley, Daniel Jones, Shepard, and Richie James being very popular on the slate, why not just throw in a fifth giant and run it back with the one? And because people don't trust Zeke as much, Pollard did good last week. He was actually on that optimal lineup we talked about for the Millie Maker on the main slate. So people will see that game log, but like people will play Lamb, Pollard, Zeke, Rush, maybe the tight end if Schultz is in or the backup, but you are going to see more 4-2. And even our guy Nades, who's all over it today, said 4-2 and 5-1 Giants is what the projections are spitting out. So they're not seeing it as a blowout on the score, but I'm saying all I care about is DFS and building these lineups out, and people are building 4-2s and 5-1s, Giants favored. More popular.
So you're saying building it, either flipping that and saying Cowboys favored, or 3-3 may honestly be a little more unique on this slate.
You might only see 20% 3-3s tonight instead of 40% 3-3s. And anything you do that favors the Dallas side more is going to be more unique tonight, just because you can fit these Giants so easily and you feel better about how condensed their offense has been. Again, remember, has been means 2-week sample size that we're working on here.
Yeah. Okay. So I am one person that I will just say I was higher on the Giants coming into the season. So it is tough for me because I do think overall they are a little better than the Cowboys. But for DFS purposes, if everyone's building that way, and I don't see a blowout, like I don't see a blowout. I think this is a close game. So a close game like we saw last night can go either way. I mean, San Francisco was winning that game the whole game. And then at the end, pretty much they lost it at the very end, but they were winning up to that point in the fourth quarter pretty much the whole time. So we've seen it all the time. Crazy stuff happens. It happened to the Chiefs too. Chiefs were winning pretty much most of that game, I think. And then they lost it at the very end. So it happens, but I can get behind some Cowboys or some Cowboy heavy builds. And even if you think the Giants win, you could still play a Giant in the captain, but do a 4-2 with Dallas too, right, Tambo? Where, that guy gets more of the production. There's not a lot to begin with, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Like the industry doesn't seem to get behind this as much. I think this is a real term, but I would call it a 2-4, where you're using two guys from one team with it being the captain. So for example, in the same example of a 4-2 we just talked about, to me, that is 4 Giants with a Giant in the captain and 2 Cowboys in the flex. The reason people are comfortable with that build is because they don't know what to do with the Cowboys and they feel very safe about the Giants. So why not flip it? And a 2-4 to me is, let's say we want to take our stand and say it's going to be Noah Brown instead of CeeDee Lamb. You go Noah Brown in the captain. He has a 2-touchdown game. You put Cooper Rush in the flex, and then you load out 4 Giants in the flex. That to me is a 2-4 because your captain is the lead number. And you're saying Noah Brown is the guy for the Cowboys. They don't really spread it around, or they spread it around too much beyond his output. So he does the best and the others just don't get enough to matter versus the Giants. You have his quarterback attached to him, and then you run down those 4 Giants you feel good about in the condensed offense. That to me is a little bit more unique build because it's a 2-4 instead of the 4-2. It's still 4 Giants, but you're using them in a completely different way. Not my favorite build for tonight, but just an example of how you can flip the general 4-2 script, which seems to be the most popular on this slate.
Yeah, that makes some sense, Tambo. And like you said, that's a way before, like that's a way you can get different. Just talking about these teams too, like you were talking about Richie James being popular. Interesting thing, Kenny Golladay went from playing all the snaps in week 1 pretty much to like none in week 2. And, is he just done? He's 6,200 too. So like, they played Sills over him pretty much. They played him. I think he got like 91% of the snaps in week 2. So
yeah,
like Kenny Golladay might just be, I mean, he's dust anyway. I think he's just dust anyways. The guy's been killed with injuries.
I just got to ask you one question though, because we talked earlier. This is so funny because everyone does what they saw last time or yesterday and applies it to this slate. Is he Devontae Parker tonight? Because yesterday Devontae Parker was dust, even with Jacoby Myers out. No one wants Devontae Parker. The only difference,
though, Tambo, is Devontae's been playing the entire season.
Correct. Yeah, you are right about that.
That's the only difference. I get what you're saying, though, and I get how you're applying it. Now, listen, if he was like $1,000, I would take a shot on him at that. Now he might not play.
Right.
You know what I mean? So obviously that's the risk. But at 6,200, I don't know. Are you taking the shot that he plays?
I think I would in some. And I think the reason I'd say it is because you are the best at explaining this. And you just did it. This is me and Big T always say about how we listen to someone say something and we think something different. Because what you just said is he's too expensive for a guy that probably won't even play, which you're right. That's huge risk. But on a single game showdown slate, and especially if you have the lineups of the portfolio to run it, what you actually said, or what I actually heard, I should say, JSU, is if he was $1,000, he would be probably not chalk, but everyone would take the shot. The reason they're not taking the shot is because he's 6,200. So it's what I always call paying up for probability. You're paying up to a stupid price. It's probably horrible, but if it hits and makes the difference, there's no ownership there. And that could be the difference. And tonight's $1 million up top. So you don't have to do it crazy, but if you have, 5% of your portfolio towards it, 10% if you want to get aggressive, my point is that could be a major difference. And what if they have to put him in? What if an injury happens early? They already got guys that are banged up. What if he just week 3 is his week? I don't know, but I'm saying on a single game slate, way more than a main slate is where I would want to consider that.
It's interesting too, because we always talk about this, like on a Thursday showdown show when it's me, you, and Big T. And we always talk about like the worst play on the board. And sometimes how the worst play on the board in showdown means it actually is an okay play because no one's going to play it, right? So you have like that lever, like this guy's way too expensive. I can't remember who it was on Thursday, but on FanDuel, he was like way too expensive. And I remember Tony just being like, he's the worst play on FanDuel. But like, then we were like, wait, doesn't that make him the best play? Because you're overpaying for him. And if he was a little cheaper, people would be on him. But because of that, no one's going to be on him. So like what you just said is that exact sentiment right there. So yeah,
there's massive risk and you're overpaying beyond what you should. But I'm saying again, that's a risk you have to be willing to take in some cases because there, and especially with the spot that he's in, JSU, you mentioned 6,200. We'll see if Schultz plays, but it sounds like Gallup is going to go on the other side. We know Shepard is going to be popular at 7,600. So Richie James is 54. Like, what if it's Golladay over Richie James today? And again, you have to find the money.
And Tony's doubtful. And Tony's doubtful for the Giants. So he looks like he won't go.
Yeah. Robinson's already out, Wandale. So like, I don't know, man. I think that's what I'm saying. It's stupid and risky.
They had Colin Johnson on IR. Like they already came in like massively banged up at that position. Darius Slayton really didn't play. I think he played just like a couple snaps last week. He's a guy. That's the thing though. Like him and Golladay were kind of pushed out, and it was Sills, Shepard, and Richie James. That's the way they went in week 2. But we've seen it kind of flip-flop between week 1 and week 2. And you're saying like, how do we know it won't flip-flop again? And you're right. How do we know it won't flip-flop again? I don't really know. But one thing I will say is Shepard seems like the constant right now. He seems like the most consistent guy out there, and they're playing around more with those outside guys, trying to find something on the outside.
And then, yes, exactly. And then lastly, like, because Jason Q just asked in the chat, didn't he only play 2 snaps? Yes, he played 3% of the snaps on week 2, but he played 77% week 1. They still paid the guy $70-something million. Like, again, everyone's taking a 2-week sample size in last week's game log, but it was the same. Again, Devontae Parker had been playing more, but the point is yesterday, no one wanted to go to Parker with Myers out. We've got guys doubtful and out here for the Giants. We've got people playing guys above and below. He's not my favorite play on the slate. I'm not saying go play 100% Kenny Golladay. I'm saying to me, it would not be crazy on a showdown slate, a 1-game slate, to slot him into 10% of my lineups, or 5 to 10%, put a range on it, because I'm willing to do it. And I'm going to get him instead of certain guys in that range where if he beats it, you could be in a good spot. And yes, we still have to wait on Gallup, right? We have to wait on Schultz for the other side. This is just a sneak preview at what we're doing. But I think the Kenny G conversation is a good one, just as an interesting game theory perspective on these single game slates.
And Tambo, Kadarius Toney did play 28 snaps, 38%, obviously before going out, and he's doubtful. So that's just some more snaps that may open up for somebody. So,
and you and I have been doing this a while, JSU. You've definitely seen where usually it's a tight end, but it's like, oh, Kittle's only going to play like 10% of the snaps this Sunday because he's banged up, and they bring him in. And guess where those 10% of the snaps are? They're down in the end zone when they're chucking a touchdown to him, and he ends up with 2 touchdowns on 10% of the snaps. Not saying that'll happen, but the point is, you never know what that's actually going to look at. So I think there's definitely a possibility.
Yeah. All right. So, all right. We talked about that. You talked about the Cowboys guys where we're still kind of waiting on some of them. Obviously it's going to make a big difference if some of those guys go or don't go, like Gallup and Schultz. It's, that's massive news to wait on, because if Schultz doesn't go, Tambo, we've got, it's going to create some chalk spots, especially in some of these value spots, right? You got backup tight ends for Dallas that are $200. And Ferguson, I think, who's probably the one of the two that'll step up and take some of that role, right?
Yes, Ferguson and Hendershot are the 2 backups there. And they mentioned it in chat, so I had to go look it up right quick. But everything was leading to Michael Gallup coming back for Monday night. But it sounds like the new word is that he'll likely be inactive. So
good. I hope they're not pushing him back too soon.
I hope they're not too. I really like the guy, and I think he's good. So, from that perspective, fine. But for this, I think for, whatever, I'm just saying you can mix and match. But for those backups, like I said, if Ferguson, who our guy Kurt loves, and then Hendershot is the other backup there. That's if Schultz is out. We'll have to wait and see. And again, Mahomie in the chat, it doesn't matter if you play 150 max. Like if you're playing 20 lineups, you can still put them in 2, and that's 10% of your lineups. It's all risk versus reward and what you want to do. And for the people saying, well, I only play 3 to 5 lineups. If you're playing only 3 to 5 lineups and it's in the $15 with $1 million to first, you should be willing to put Kenny G into one of those and play to win. Like, just take your shot. You're just putting the money in to take a shot. So why not take a shot that could lead to the top? That's how I look at it.
Now, this is where contest selection makes a difference, right, Tambo? And I think what Tambo said very clearly was, if you're playing the $15 Millie Maker or like the $9 on FanDuel or whatever it is, right? And you're like, I'm just trying to, I have a little bit of money. I just want to have a little excitement. I want to have a little, something on the game while I watch it and try and win $1 million. And I only got 3 to 5 teams. That's when your risk can be greater. But if you're playing like the 150 3-entry max or something like that, I don't think you do it then. You know what I mean? That's, and trust me, from someone who plays 3 to 5 lineups, literally, like, that's how I've played my entire DFS career pretty much. And I've done it for, I don't know, 8 years now, 7 years, however long I've been playing every day DFS, which I'm sorry, but like that is something in its own that I take a lot of pride in, because I've been able to do this for that long. And I play all the main sports and pretty much play every day, most of all the main slates. So, and I do it that way. So I'm telling you right now, there are ways, depending on the contest, where you can get greater and greater with the type of risk that you take. And I always tell people when they ask me, like, how do you do it? Or what do you do? Everyone's different. This style doesn't work for everyone. So for everyone hearing me say it's worked for me, well, I can pick out 20 other DFS guys that have been doing it just as long as me, and they'll have 20 different ways of how they've done it. And it'll be different from the way I've done it. So everyone is different.
That's all it is.
Play towards your style though. And I think in Showdown, Tambo brings up the selection makes a huge difference.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like you said, disagree, but then you said the right thing. But my point is, if he's saying I can't do that because I'm not playing 150. Well, if I'm talking about 150, there's only one tournament I'm talking about, and it's the largest field tournaments. Even if you're playing the $5 150, it's still a massive field. So that's where you want to take those shots and you want to get after, or the 25 cent or 50 cent or whatever they have. But when you're playing 1 to 5 or sort of in that range, 3 max, 5 max, 1 lineup, single entry, no, you're not rolling this guy out. But I'm saying some people, and a lot of people watching the show, still want to take their crack at $1 million. They still want to play that $15 tonight, even if they're playing, 5 lineups only in it. I'm saying
a victim of it. I put my lineups in the Millie Maker, and like, you know what I mean? Like, that's fine.
You're putting your lineups over because you still believe they can win and you're building them accordingly. Yeah, I'm saying if you were really playing, like our boy Big T calls it, like sort of the movie theater money, instead of going to the theater or out for dinner tonight, you're basically putting the money in to take a shot at $1 million. I would not safen up, whatever the right word is, sort of squeeze up where you're trying to get too safe with your lineups and play safe and not play something like that, I would go after it. I would play Golladay as a way. And it sounds like we're advocating like I'm going nuts for Golladay. My point was more taking shots off the board.
I hate Golladay too, so I don't even want to make people think like we're in on Golladay because I
won't even victory lap it if he hits. I'm saying we're using him as a great explanation piece on how you need to think about these slates in these largest field tournaments, especially, and then trying to apply it again back to like JSU's point in qualifiers or something like that, satellites, playing the 153 max, or I only can put one lineup in the 222 if you've got the bankroll for it. My point would be probably not doing it there, but in something as large of a field as this, and you're just throwing 3 to 5 in against all these players like myself, putting 150 in with tons of thought and process and everything behind it, you are going to have to just take your shots and go after it. So you should look to get off the board to give yourself any shot at the million possible, because if you want to just double your money, go play a cash game. You'll just put the best plays in, probably crush it every single week and at least have a shot there to double your money. But in these tournaments, you should be willing to get off the board depending on what you're playing.
Yep, that's exactly it. I mean, like Darius Slayton for $200 is a way better chance taking if you want to minimize the risk over Kenny Golladay for $6,200, when in the end they could both see 4 snaps or maybe one of them ticks up. You know what I mean? So like that's just an example of like the difference in plays depending on contest. Like that's a guy you could go to, and it's still a risk though, right, Tambo? Because he doesn't play that much, but it's a $200 risk. And we always say this all the time. That cheap dude at minimum price is never like destroying your line. Like just never. Cause
that's why it's always better with the cheap guy. Right. That's why it's way better with the cheap guy. But going back to it again, like for example, just a sort of final thoughts, but if Dalton Schultz is out and someone just mentioned in the chat, RG says Gallup inactive, everyone's saying that it looks like it's flipped and he's likely, inactive, but, more likely doubtful now and likely inactive. So the point would be if Dalton Schultz is out, JSU, and Gallup is now out, sounds like that's true. What ends up happening with roster construction tonight? Everyone's filing in the cheapies again. If you just have a bit of a unique build, whether it's like what we just saw with multiple running backs and defense, they're not as cheap at running back tonight as what we got last night. But the point would be now you've got yourself a different roster construction if you're not just playing someone cheap because of that. That's what it comes down to.
In Tambo, what also happens is all those stud guys at the top, you can bump their ownership a little bit in the captain.
Yeah.
Like you can just bump it. Saquon's going to be 5-10% higher than we thought. CD, bump it. The quarterbacks, bump it a little bit. Like, because everyone's going to have the money to do whatever they want. They're going to be able to do it. And it kind of is one of those slates where honestly, like people are going to look at it and go, well, I don't really like a lot of these guys at the top, but I guess I'll just do it because I got the value, right, Tambo? Like, so it's like they're going to be playing guys outside of maybe Saquon and CD where they're like, I don't love Zeke. I don't love Shepard, Tony Pollard, Cooper Rush, but it's like, I guess I'm just going to go with it because I have the money to do it. And that's where maybe you can get some leverage on the field, knowing that, for example, and maybe taking advantage of it. Just please don't do like the $200 tight end and the captain, like our guy KFALIK. Please don't do that one. That doesn't work.
It's a story for another day. He's not with us this week. We'll wait till next week and we can use it with him. But yeah, lots of good stuff there, man. I think it's good stuff that we talked through. And like I said, I think that, that's a key, like you mentioned the differences between the 150 and 3 max. And that's why playing with JSU versus myself, I know JSU, you don't max it all the time. There's times where you'll take your shot and go in and get after it, but you're very good at just saying, what's the field doing? What am I doing different? And putting it in the places that matter so that when it pays off, you end up hitting for something big on and usually you're about the roster construction, like you just mentioned. So wait till the inactives come out, get the official numbers. And already, like you're already thinking, your first thought in your head was, when this happens, ownership on these guys goes up even more than what the projections will show for certain sites. And you can start to get your leverage that way through roster construction and guys that you're using as pivots. Because for example, just last one, but Shepard is going to get even more popular if both Gallup and Schultz are out, because no one wants to play Golladay, and Pollard and Zeke are a little bit risky and on that Dallas side. So it just means Shepard at that price just becomes that much more popular.
Well, Shepard's going to be popular anyways because he's the only giant that people trust. He's the only giant that people trust. And honestly, I don't really like that. I don't want to just go against that the Dallas second, like the Dallas defense is a solid defense. I'm not going to put I think if I'm going up for a Cowboy captain, it's Zeke. It's Zeke. He's always had good history against the Giants. I know he hasn't had some good games to start the season, but the touches are there, the snaps are there. He always just finds ways to go off in spots where everyone's not thinking about him. I think too. I don't know if he'll be popular. I would assume not, but that's just my first kind of thought. But yeah, no one's got to apologize in chat either. You don't have to apologize for putting in your thinking or your opinions. You guys are good. Like, put in whatever you want, as long as you're not just like bashing me or Tambo in the chat. We literally don't care. You guys can say whatever you want. You don't have to apologize. It's not bad energy or bad mojo to give your opinions on things. And I got what you were saying, Mahomie. His point was more just like he wanted to make sure people understood the difference between 150 max and a 3 max. And when we talk, we always try and make it a point. And we think, though, Tambo, sometimes we think because we've been doing this for so long and we're on so many shows, everyone just kind of gets it. You know what I mean? But
yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that at times. He brought up a great point. As I said, excellent point. Like, we try to apply. My point was more like, if I'm talking about 150 and your points on that, what do you think it applies to? It has to apply to a tournament where you're eligible to put 150 in. That's where I'm saying that's the difference when I'm talking portfolio and stuff. But like you said, for the new folks joining us, it's a great point. I'm glad we could talk it through, and we love to interact with the chat. That's the whole point, right? Have the fun with it, go back and forth on it, and try and give ideas and theories that you can apply. And like our boy MYG fan says, it's a ton of content and theory that hopefully you can apply to your own lineups. That's the key. We're not just saying picks, right? It's about the strategy, the ways to be different, how you can apply it. That's what this whole show is all about. It wasn't results oriented. It's to look at the lineups and see how people got there and thought process behind it, right? Not just, should I play this guy at captain or not? That's what we have a lot more with our premium show later with Big T Whistles, hosted by JT Hayes, where they're going to start talking about, if I do this in captain, what do I do below? What are some of the rules that I would use on this slate? How would you apply it to build out a portfolio of 150? All these factors. So if you're not signed up, runpuresports.com, check that out. But we love doing this free show, going through it all for you guys on Mondays.
And that's why you hit the like button, you hit the subscribe button on the video. That's why you do it. Get all this free content. And then hopefully it wins you some money. And then you can subscribe to Run Pure Sports with the money you won and get that knowledge and learn more about the process from guys like Big T and Whistles and all the other studs. DC with baseball, Tambo more with golf, hoop, all the guys we got over here. That's why you subscribe. So hopefully this free content can help you enough to get you into the winner's circle. And then you want to learn more and you come over here. So check that out. And Tambo, I mean, I think we broke it down. I mean, we didn't get into the game too much. Those guys will get into it a little bit more. Yeah. So if you just want to give maybe like right now, someone that you're just really high on, you're going to be overweight on in captain or something like that, just for the people. And then I'll go as well. Yeah,
probably Richie James, Sterling Shepard. Like I said,
I'll build. Not Kenny G. No Kenny G love for captain.
Not for captain. No. I mean, if that happens, that'd be insane. But I'll have him in the pool for sure. Noah Brown on the Dallas side. Someone mentioned in the chat earlier, but I already liked it. I think Lamb would be the more popular option than, of course, Zeke, if people go that way. But Zeke will probably only be 5 to 8% range, is my guess in captain. But I like Noah Brown. Maybe he goes a little bit forgotten. I do think these sort of mid-tier priced captains can come through tonight and allow you to get more of these guys up the middle, like we talked about, JSU, where you can start fitting those ones that make sense, and then you don't have to punt off 2 guys in that setup. So I like that better for this slate. Just early look.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I'm definitely thinking about Zeke. I think you guys are right when your stance of, if you play a Dallas captain or if you go heavier on the Dallas side in your builds, right, you're going to end up being somewhat different. And so attacking the Zekes who's had 2, not so great games, and people see that, the public sees the game log, they don't love it. Right. But everything's there, right? It's just, he hasn't gotten it yet. He hasn't gotten there, but he's on the field enough. He's getting the touches. I think he's going to be fine. And I do think this is a slower game where, they got Cooper Rush at quarterback. They're going to want to run it's not like they're not going to try and get Zeke involved. So that's the thing. And then, like you said, you said Noah Brown, and I do think a wide receiver not named CeeDee Lamb, trying to find one of those in captain makes a lot of sense. So a Noah Brown would make some sense in the captain. And like I said, with those mid-tier captains, once the news comes out, if these guys are out, those mid-tier captains, they'll go lower in ownership.
Yeah.
Not higher, right? The guys that'll go higher, unfortunately, would be like Zeke and the quarterbacks and the stud wide receiver and the stud running back. Those are the guys that are going to go higher. So just remember that when you're building your teams. If you're building showdown lineups, build to be unique, especially in the Millie Maker formats. That's the most important thing.
Definitely.
All right. Tambo, final words to the people. It was fun. I love this show, and I hope people enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think this was one of our best ones yet. I think. I know it's only week 3, and I love doing the show all season because it's more about the theory, the strategy, how to get better at DFS and build for these tournaments. We're all learning. It helps me the most to be able to go through it, see it, learn it, teach it, everything with it. So I love doing the show with you. Tonight is going to be a great slate, like you said, and we'll be back here next Monday. Every Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern. You can join it. If you haven't, this is the free part of it. Even if you're not going to become a member and win with us at Run Pure Sports, it's free to subscribe to this channel and get all these shows for free. It's free to hit the like button to support. If you don't want to pay the $100 a month or whatever to get all sports for one price, you can click the like button, free. So we appreciate you guys. We'll be back next Monday, same time. A ton of great content coming up this week here on the channel for free.
Bam. Couldn't have said it better. Guys, good luck tonight in your showdown contest. For me, JSU and Toe Tag and Tambo, my favorite Canadian. Simon, wrap us up.